It was a hug from Harry that brought a woman to tears. India Brown had been waiting patiently since 4 a.m.
Just to see them will be amazing, but if I'm lucky enough to hug Prince Harry, it would just be phenomenal.
How quickly the mood can change. What once felt like a triumphant chapter in Prince Harry and Meghan Markle's story now carries a very different tone, and their latest visit to Australia has made that shift impossible to ignore. This was meant to feel like a return, a moment of reconnection with a country that had once embraced them with overwhelming enthusiasm. Instead, what unfolded felt far more layered, more complicated, and far less predictable. Before we go deeper into what this shift really means, make sure you subscribe, because the next part of this story only gets more revealing.
A pregnant Meghan and her husband Prince Harry kicked off their royal duties down under on Tuesday by cuddling a koala at an Australian zoo. The couple officially opened a new science institute in Sydney, mixing with locals during the first day of their packed trip. It's their first engagement since Kensington Palace announced they were expecting a baby in the spring.
Back in 2018, everything looked entirely different. Fresh from their royal wedding, Harry and Meghan arrived in Australia as newlyweds at the height of global fascination. Crowds gathered in huge numbers, people waited for hours just to catch a glimpse, and every appearance carried an undeniable sense of excitement. There was a feeling that something new was happening within the monarchy, and the public wanted to be part of it. When the couple shared the news of their pregnancy during that tour, it strengthened that connection even further. Australians didn't just feel like spectators, they felt included in a personal milestone. That moment helped create a lasting emotional bond, one that made the entire visit feel intimate despite its global attention.
Buckingham Palace has confirmed that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex will not be returning as working members of the royal family. Prince Harry and Meghan stepped down from royal duties last year and moved to the United States. The couple, who are expecting their second child, have been stripped of their patronages and honorary titles, which will be returned to the Queen and distributed elsewhere in the royal family.
It was a time when the narrative felt simple. They were widely celebrated, supported, and seen as a symbol of change and possibility. Fast forward to now, and the atmosphere tells a very different story. The same locations, the same types of engagements, yet the reception feels noticeably altered. This time, there were no overwhelming crowds dominating the narrative. The arrival felt quieter, more controlled, almost cautious. Instead of spontaneous excitement, there was a sense of restraint in how people reacted. It wasn't openly negative, but it also lacked the warmth that once defined their presence. It existed somewhere in between, and that middle ground is exactly what people are focusing on. What makes this shift so striking is not just the visible difference in crowd energy, but the deeper change in perception. Over the past few years, Harry and Meghan have stepped away from their roles as working royals and built a new identity outside the institution. That transition has inevitably reshaped how audiences view them. The expectations that once fueled the excitement of 2018 were closely tied to their royal positions. Now, those expectations are less clearly defined, and that uncertainty is reflected in the public response. There is also a growing sense that people are no longer reacting only to what they see in the moment. They are responding to the broader narrative that has developed over time. Interviews, projects, media coverage, and ongoing debates all feed into how each appearance is interpreted. A quieter crowd no longer feels like a simple observation. It becomes something analyzed, discussed, and given meaning beyond the moment itself. At the same time, reactions remain divided. Some continue to view these visits as genuine engagement, focusing on the interactions and the effort to connect. Others take a wider view and question what these appearances represent now and how they fit into the couple's evolving role on the global stage. Both perspectives exist at once, and that contrast is what gives this moment its intensity. What is clear is that this visit is being watched differently than before. It is no longer just about appearances or crowd size. It is about perception, identity, and how both continue to shift in real time. And once a story reaches that point, it becomes far more complex than any single headline can fully capture. The excitement back then was undeniable. The energy felt electric, and wherever Harry and Meghan went, they were met with a blend of celebrity fascination and royal admiration. It wasn't just curiosity driving the crowds, it was genuine enthusiasm. People didn't simply gather, they arrived early, waited patiently, and filled entire streets just for a brief moment of connection. There was a sense that Australia had embraced them completely, not just as visiting figures, but as something closer, almost personal. But that version of the story did not last. Everything began to shift after they stepped away from royal duties. The years that followed introduced a different kind of visibility, one shaped by interviews, large media deals, documentaries, and an ongoing stream of headlines that steadily redefined public perception. Their move to California marked a turning point that went beyond geography. It signaled a transformation in identity. They were no longer operating within the framework of the monarchy, and that change brought a new level of complexity to how they were viewed. During that period, Australia faded into the background of their story. While they focused on building a new life in Montecito, expanding into media, public speaking, and business ventures, the connection to places that once played a central role in their narrative became less immediate. So when news broke that they would return this year, it immediately captured attention, but the tone of that attention was noticeably different. This time, they were not arriving as official representatives of the monarchy. There were no formal duties, no institutional structure guiding the visit, and no direct link to the traditional charitable framework that once defined their presence. Instead, they arrived as independent public figures, navigating a space that blends advocacy, influence, and commercial activity. That distinction changed how the visit was interpreted from the very beginning. For many observers, it reshaped the meaning entirely. Even before their arrival, signs of tension had already begun to surface. Online discussions gained momentum, and a petition quickly attracted significant support, surpassing 40,000 signatures. Its message focused on preventing any taxpayer involvement connected to the visit. Regardless of the accuracy of those concerns, the reaction itself revealed something more important. It showed a shift in how part of the public now understands their role. What once felt like a shared moment between the monarchy and the public began to feel, for some, more individualized and less connected to its original purpose. That perception has become central to how their return is being viewed. Supporters interpret this new chapter as a form of independence, a move away from institutional expectations and toward a more modern approach to influence. In that view, the shift allows them to engage with causes and audiences on their own terms, without the limitations that once defined their roles. Critics, however, see a different picture. They question whether the boundary between public service and private opportunity has become increasingly blurred. The absence of official roles, combined with the presence of paid engagements and a strong media presence, has led some to view the transition as more than just evolution. And this is where the tension becomes most visible, in the gap between intention and interpretation. In 2018, the meaning was clear. It was a royal tour supported by tradition, structure, and shared expectations. Now, the meaning is far less certain. It exists as a combination of appearances, messaging, and perception, all unfolding simultaneously and shaped by how different audiences choose to interpret it. That is why this return feels so different. It is no longer just about location or activity. It is about how the narrative has changed, and how every moment is now filtered through a lens that did not exist before. The reaction reportedly caught Meghan's team off guard, and it didn't take long for a response to follow. Their spokesperson moved quickly to clarify that the visit was entirely private, emphasizing that it had no connection to government funding or official royal support. On paper, that explanation was meant to settle concerns, to draw a clear line between this trip and any form of public obligation. But in practice, it seemed to do the opposite. Instead of closing the conversation, it expanded it, because once questions take hold in the public space, they rarely disappear with a single statement. Skepticism continued to build, and attention shifted toward a simpler, more persistent question. Why now? Why return to Australia at this particular moment, and what exactly was the purpose behind the visit? That question lingered in headlines, online discussions, and commentary, shaping how every moment that followed would be interpreted. When Meghan and Harry finally arrived, the contrast with 2018 became impossible to overlook. Back then, their presence alone had been enough to generate excitement on a massive scale. Crowds formed naturally, energy built quickly, and every appearance felt like a shared event between them and the public. This time, the scenes were noticeably different. The large, enthusiastic gatherings that once defined their visits were absent. In their place were smaller, more controlled groups, often made up of people who happened to be nearby rather than those who had traveled specifically to see them. The shift wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was unmistakable in the atmosphere. Meghan maintained her public composure, smiling, engaging, and moving through each appearance with the same outward confidence. Harry did the same, interacting with ease and familiarity. Yet the surrounding energy felt more subdued. It lacked the spontaneous excitement that once followed them, replaced instead by something quieter, more measured, and at times uncertain. That change did not go unnoticed by the media. Australian outlets and commentators began to frame the visit in ways that quickly spread beyond the country. One phrase in particular gained traction: cosplay royal tour. It captured the idea that while the appearances visually resembled a traditional royal visit, something essential was missing beneath the surface. The structure remained, the locations felt familiar, but the context had shifted. For many observers, that framing resonated. Without official roles or institutional backing, the visit appeared to recreate the format of a royal tour without the same foundation behind it. That contrast made comparisons to earlier visits unavoidable, and those comparisons highlighted just how much had changed. On the ground, reactions reflected that uncertainty. Some people still engaged positively, offering support and participating in smaller, more personal interactions. But alongside that, there was a noticeable sense of confusion. Many seemed unsure about what the visit represented. Was it a charitable effort, a speaking engagement, a media-driven appearance, or something that blended all three? That lack of clarity shaped the overall response. Instead of a unified wave of enthusiasm, reactions were fragmented. There was curiosity, indifference, and occasional skepticism, all existing at the same time. The absence of a clear, shared understanding made the entire experience feel different from the outset. For some, this moment marked a turning point in how the Sussex brand is perceived in Australia. The influence that once felt effortless now appeared more dependent on context and interpretation. The automatic excitement that defined their earlier visit was no longer guaranteed, and that difference sparked broader questions about how their public image has evolved. The shift became even more apparent during Meghan's headline event, the Best Life Retreat, which stood at the center of the trip's purpose. Designed as an exclusive, curated experience for a limited group, it promised a blend of wellness, personal growth, and connection. On paper, it represented a clear direction forward, but in the context of everything surrounding the visit, it also became another focal point in a much larger conversation about perception, expectation, and what this new chapter is meant to represent. But once the event unfolded, the reality appeared more complicated. Reports suggested that tickets did not fully sell out, and attendance fell short of what many had expected for someone with such global recognition. Images and accounts from inside the venue described a space that looked only partially filled, and that visual quickly became part of the wider conversation. In a landscape where perception carries enormous weight, even small details can take on outsized meaning, and a room that doesn't appear full can raise questions far beyond simple logistics. For some observers, the issue wasn't only about attendance, but about focus. There was a growing sense that the event centered heavily on Meghan herself, her presence, her perspective, and her personal narrative, rather than offering something broadly structured or clearly defined for attendees. Supporters saw that as the point, arguing that the appeal of the retreat was always meant to be personal and experience-driven, built around connection and storytelling. Critics, however, questioned whether that focus translated into tangible value, particularly at a premium price point where expectations are naturally higher. At the same time, another interpretation began to take shape. Some suggested that the visit may have served a secondary purpose, acting as a way to introduce or test Meghan's evolving personal brand within the Australian market. While this idea was never formally stated, it circulated widely enough to gain attention. In that reading, the retreat was not just an isolated event, but part of a broader strategy. a way to measure interest and explore whether future ventures, products, or lifestyle initiatives could find traction with an international audience. That possibility added another layer of complexity to how the trip was perceived. The visit had initially been framed around wellness and speaking engagements, yet Meghan's schedule also included stops at hospitals and shelters, spaces that carry a very different tone and expectation. For some, this combination felt natural, reflecting a balance between advocacy and public engagement. For others, it appeared less cohesive, raising questions about how these different elements connected to the overall purpose of the trip. It is within that gap that criticism began to sharpen. Some observers suggested that these appearances might be functioning as carefully constructed moments designed to reinforce a particular image. Whether or not that interpretation is accurate, it became part of the broader narrative, and once introduced, it continued to shape how each new appearance was viewed. As skepticism increased, the perception of the visit shifted. What may have been intended as a strong return began, in some eyes, to resemble a promotional effort still searching for clarity. The emotional connection that once defined their relationship with Australian audiences felt less visible, and that absence became a point of discussion in itself. Prince Harry encountered his own challenges during the trip. His keynote appearance at a mental health event drew attention after reports suggested that ticket sales had not reached expectations, leading to notable price adjustments. While such changes can occur for many reasons, in this context they contributed to the broader narrative surrounding the visit. Taken together, these moments created a picture that felt uncertain rather than definitive. Instead of a unified response, the trip generated a mix of reactions, support, curiosity, criticism, and ongoing debate. That combination reflects the current stage of their public journey, where every action is not only observed but interpreted from multiple perspectives at once. In an attempt to attract more attendees, even after ticket prices were reduced, the event reportedly continued to struggle to reach full capacity. That detail alone added another layer to the broader conversation, reinforcing the perception that demand may not have aligned with expectations. In a space where visibility and engagement are closely watched, even subtle indicators like attendance levels can quickly take on larger meaning. For Prince Harry, this moment highlighted a more complex reality. Once widely regarded as one of the most popular figures within the monarchy, someone known for drawing large crowds and connecting with people effortlessly, he now appears to be navigating a different kind of public response. The shift has not been sudden, but situations like this make it more visible. Observers often describe him as existing between two distinct worlds. On one side is the legacy of his royal past, shaped by tradition, structure, and a clearly defined role. On the other is the independent path he and Meghan have chosen, built around personal projects, public speaking, and media ventures. The challenge is that these two identities do not always align in a way that feels fully coherent to audiences watching from the outside. That tension has been noticeable throughout the trip. The same individual who once generated widespread excitement now encounters quieter receptions and more measured reactions. This does not necessarily indicate rejection, but it does reflect a shift in how he is perceived. In the current media landscape, even small changes in public response can carry significant weight. For some, this is simply part of a broader transition. Stepping away from a clearly defined institutional role was always likely to involve adjustment. The expectations have changed, the context is different, and the framework through which the public engages with him is no longer the same. For others, however, it raises deeper questions about influence, relevance, and how well this new direction connects with audiences. The Australia trip brought these questions into sharper focus. What was intended to feel like a return instead highlighted how much has evolved over time. The country that once responded with overwhelming enthusiasm now appears more divided, more cautious, and more reflective in how it interprets their presence. And that uncertainty is what makes this moment stand out. It is not just about attendance figures or media coverage. It is about what those details suggest within a much larger story about identity, perception, and change. Before you go, make sure you subscribe, because the next chapter of this story is already starting to unfold. So now the conversation turns outward. How do you interpret Australia's reaction to Meghan and Harry? Does it feel like a natural evolution, or something more significant? And when you look at how things have shifted, where do you think that change truly comes from?